Hello and welcome to the God is a Geek podcast. My name's Adam Cook and this is episode 534, 534. And I'm joined this week by Lyle Carr. Hello, Lyle. You all right?
Hi. It's just me this week. It's just the two of us on a lovely little video game date. That's what this is. This is our date night, but it's also the morning, as might be spoiled later.
I was going to say good morning actually, and I thought I'd never say that sort of thing, but it's rare we do one in the morning. But we did sort of. Well, I say we. I did kind of promise that we wouldn't miss another week, so we're doing two this week. And also, listen, I'm just going to use this opportunity to say that if you're a Patreon, and you can find out more via patreon.com/GodIsAGeek, you would have got a new chopping board episode this week, which is our podcast about food. So you would have had a bounty of us talking on podcasts if you're a Patreon supporter for £1 or $1 a month. But that's not what we're really here to talk about. We've got three big games this week. Well, one big... Well, I mean, actually, I don't know that any of these are what most people would call big games. They're big games to us. But we've got one pretty sizable game and two, I would say, indies. Let's start with Disgaea, Lyle. Disgaea 7, Vows of the Virtueless, a series that I have friends who are obsessed with. I know all the pretty dude stuff, and I know all that stuff, but I don't think until this one... Spoilers. I had ever actually played one, but you had. So you start Disgaea 7: Vows of the Virtueless. What do we? I mean, I know what you're thinking because I've seen the review, but
but
tell me anyway.
For those who haven't, just for fun, I guess.
Yeah, why not?
I'll say that Disgaea 7 is a great return to form for the Disgaea series. So the last game, Disgaea 6, they introduced a new sort of 3D art style. It had always been like 2D sprites before that. In Disgaea 6, they had this new 3D art style, which I'd say took a bit of getting used to visually, but the main issue with that is that it released on the Switch exclusively first, and the Switch could not handle the new 3D art style. So most people's first impression, if they were excited for a new Disgaea game and wanted to play it, as soon as was available in the West, they played it on the Switch, and it had it was like the blurriest game you've ever played if you put it on performance mode. And even when you put it on performance mode, it had big frame rate issues, like just wandering around the hub and everything. It was
so that performance really mode stuff isn't new to 7. That was in 6.
No,
I was quite intrigued by that. I don't think I've seen many Switch games offer that.
No,
actually. That I can think of.
I mean, I assume it was because they knew that Disgaea 6 was not going to be running great, and it was a shame. And then alongside that as well, because it was this new game in the series, and I imagine they had to do a lot of new animations and stuff for 3D character models over 2D. There were kind of limited numbers of classes in the game and stuff like that. So it was, for people who played a lot of games in the series, it felt a little bit barren of some of the content that you'd maybe expect from a Disgaea game. So Disgaea 7 was one where there had already been, they'd already talked about how they had more classes than ever before, and they'd done all these things that were going to be, helping to make this series feel great again. And then alongside that, they've kind of scaled back the story, whereas the story's usually very interdimensional, going to different worlds type things. In Disgaea 7, it's set in one netherworld that's kind of samurai themed. So
sorry, because am I right in that Disgaea is a bit like Final Fantasy in that you don't have to go, oh, it's number 7, I don't understand, I've not. They're unique stories per game.
Yeah, they're unique stories. They're always in the same universe, though.
Okay.
So
but the characters are always are these characters I'm playing as all new people?
They are all new.
Okay.
Yeah, there's you'll usually have ways of getting older characters from older games and bringing them across.
Sid in Final Fantasy 7 or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or... just getting a random character. Oh, I know this character, and they won't have a story in this game or anything. They'll just be one of your units, but they'll look them out. So that's sort of a thing that often happens. But in this game, it's this world where you've got sort of two main characters. You've got one who's like a samurai who's sort of fallen from grace called Fuji, and I can't remember the girl's name, but she's sort of obsessed with samurais and
she's an otaku, really, isn't she? Big time.
She is. She's 100%.
I thought she was the main character, and then as soon as you sort of meet them up. In the hub, I seem to be automatically put as the samurai guy. I think.
You can.
I know you can change by paying. You'll get into the systems, I'm sure, because there's a lot.
Yeah. So we'll get to. Let's get to the actual game, because this is just all set up. The actual game is, sort of at its core, it's just sort of a tactics game, really, I guess. But there are a lot of systems that are not really in a lot of tactics games. Like there's the whole lifting and throwing mechanic, which is a big part of all the Disgaea games, but where you can pick up any unit and throw them. And then in this game, there's a thing where certain classes that are monsters, if you land a character on them, they'll automatically throw in the direction they're facing. So it basically means that you sort of can juggle everything all over the place and like get to places very quickly sometimes, or with elevation, you can like throw people upwards so they can get to platforms.
And that's not new to 7.
No, that's been since the PS2.
Because so I'm a newcomer, as I said, that actually feels quite important a thing. Like I was finding it quite difficult, and I think I worked out quite quickly that actually throwing is quite important. Like as you say, you can line people up, and it's a way to get people deeper into the battlefield quicker.
100%.
And I wasn't doing that at first, whereas after a few hours, I was like, I'm just launching everyone everywhere all the time to get
usually your first couple of turns are usually just sort of like throwing madly in every direction, really, just so that you're not just sort of miles away from the enemies and they don't just start picking you off with guns or whatever.
Yes.
I knew that especially would resonate with you there. And then alongside that, you've got the geo panels, which are like coloured panels where when you stand on them, they'll apply different buffs or different nerfs to you or the enemies, and by destroying little crystals that are on the coloured panels, you can sort of start chain reactions that get rid of these panels. Like, it's quite complex, but again, that's something that's been in Disgaea since the first game. That's been there forever. But it's like almost like a puzzle game element alongside the tactics element, where you have to sort of figure out, okay, well, there are these panels which mean the enemies get 2 turns instead of 1, and that feels a bit bullshit. I don't want to get completely and utterly battered by these enemies. So if I throw this panel here and then shoot this panel, it'll get rid of them all and deal damage to everyone and all this sort of stuff. But and then, you know, alongside that, you've got all your classes, which there are loads of, and unlock.
You've played Fire Emblem Engage, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes. You might be able to help me here. So, again, sorry to keep saying, as a newcomer, the geo stuff, because there is a lot. There is a lot in this game.
There is a lot.
But I think the geo stuff would have been more confusing to me, but it's not the same. There's sort of similar elements in Fire Emblem ish, if I recall, where you can, like, it's basically changing panels, isn't it? Like, there are panels that do things and you're changing them. So I didn't fully understand the geo stuff, if I'm honest. So far, I'm not finished with the game, obviously, but I didn't fully understand the geo stuff, because there's a mission really early on, and this is probably going to be impossible for you to remember because they're long games, I'm guessing, where one of the each level has, because it doesn't tell you, I don't think, hey, you probably should grind. And it was only when I did that. Chapter 1, I finished chapter 1, went back to chapter 1, and was just like, I spent actually an hour, give or take, just going through, repeatedly playing those first chapter levels again, without the story stuff as well, obviously. And the one that constant, because there's bonuses, like 5, I think, bonuses, like varying from gold to bronze. Yeah. And it's a way to get materials and money and experience and items. And again, why I think grinding is quite important, and I'm probably not exactly preaching. I think people probably know this if they played Disgaea. I didn't. The one that constantly stumped me was to destroy all the geoblocks one, because I figured it out that you obviously have to, because you can move them, right?
Yeah. I
couldn't seem to, and again, I'm quite early on still, like 4 hours maybe. I couldn't quite work out why I couldn't. So there was one in the middle that's, I think it was yellow. That's easy. You just destroy that and it takes away the yellowness.
Yeah.
I think it was purple and red that were like on the opposite sides of the
map.
map.
I know the exact stage, by the way. I grinded on that a lot, Okay, so
so did I, because I was trying to work it out, and I couldn't work it out, so I destroyed them both, and then I realised, oh no, I haven't set them the wrong way round, I think.
Yeah.
But I couldn't work out how to get them the right way round. I tried picking up one and throwing it over, and picking the other one and throwing it up, basically ignoring the enemies at this point. And I'm still now not sure what it wants me to do there.
Okay, what it wants you to do there, to just specifically talk about this one level for now.
Sorry,
is you get those panels, So there's like crystals on each side,
Yes.
and in the middle there's another strip of color. You get
Yes.
both of the crystals, you throw them both into the middle, and then if you destroy one of them, then it turns the middle one into the color of the other one.
Right.
And then it turns the color of that whole area into the next color, and then they all sort of wipe out eventually. So it's like it's chain reactions and stuff like that.
I'm blind, is what I'm hearing, because I didn't see the panel in the middle. That I do remember them mentioning that there are like geo panels that you put them on. I just couldn't see. I think is it the same one that you warp in on? Like,
yeah.
Oh my god. I might have to edit this part out because I just feel like no. But honestly, I thought about doing that, and I'm like, no, that's where you choose where your characters come in, and so it won't be the same. It's the same thing. Yeah, okay,
yeah, it is. It's the same thing. But yeah,
don't hate me, Disgaea fans. I'm sorry. It's my fault, not the game. Sorry.
I mean, but at the same time, this is a series that coming in as a newcomer, you are going to be like surprised. Like I can't, even the first game, playing it back in the day, like it had all these systems, and when I jumped into it as like a teenager, I was like, "What the fuck is going on? What the hell is this?"
I feel a little less bad now, a little bit. Yeah,
like,
still feel pretty.
It's one of those games. It's one of those games where you kind of have to say like, well, if you're enjoying this and you kind of like are getting a bit stumped by it, at least if you just start putting the hours in, you'll eventually figure out all these systems, and then every other game you play, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. So like it works out pretty well, really, in the end. But it's definitely a series where getting into it, like you're gonna have a first game where you're gonna have to bash your head against a wall a little bit.
I do really like it, by the way. I should say,
yeah,
like it's I don't think there's. I mean, you play probably more of the Eastern sort of games like this than I do, probably, I would say. But I don't feel like there's many of them come across in any... I mean, I'm not saying this is mainstream, but I don't feel like there's many that come across that have got this kind of level of silliness to them, and I sort of miss 100%. That a little bit. Like, I'm sure other people are like fed up with the dude stuff, but like I kind of like it, and I've always kind of from afar like been like I've always thought I should play these. These seem like the kind of silly that I'd like, and I'm really pleased that I finally played one, even if I don't finish it. Like it just, I feel like Final Fantasy is a perfect example that it's like, I know you haven't played the newer one, but it's there's no jokes in that. Like there's no, it's very serious. It's a very serious business, RPGing, and Disgaea feels like it's like unwilling to give up on that, quite old fashioned in a way, like silliness, and and it does veer a little bit into, like, there's some, when you finish a mission and it comes up with the splash screens, there are some of them that you're like, okay, that's a bit
bloody saucy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's more that, like, I haven't seen anything like that in the game yet, and then all of a sudden there's like just like loads of girls in a sort of hot spring with very
one that jumped
clothing. Yeah, that's the one. There's not loads of them. I'm not going to like do it a disservice and say, oh, it's pervy or anything. But it was like, wow, okay.
I just thought I was playing a silly tactics game.
But it's more like, I don't even know who those people are. Most of them.
No.
Or why they're scantily clad. Or why I'm seeing it. But like, I'll accept that if I get to keep some of the weird like penguins talking and dude stuff and they're throwing people around stuff, like, just to go back a little bit. There's no way you could have someone who doesn't know what games are walk into a room and not go, that's really weird. Why are you just like tossing everyone around in this weird, like, it's but again, I can't think of another game that lets you do it. And also, if you throw a monster, and I forget this quite often, if you throw, like, I mean, you get like a prinny quite early, well, start of the game, don't you? Like a private prinny.
Yeah.
And that's classed as a monster, even though it's like a cute little... They are penguins, aren't they?
They are penguins,
penguins,
yeah.
okay.
I think so.
Just wanted to be sure. Again, don't want to upset the Sky fans. But like, if you throw your friends around, and it's fine, you're just throwing your friends around. If you throw a monster in inverted commas around, because I don't like calling prinny a monster, but if you throw an animal or zombie or monster around or whatever, they explode.
It's actually just prinnies that explode, by the way.
It's
not
just
all
prinnies?
Monsters. It's just prinnies. That's a thing about prinnies.
It did tell me this.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I thought... Maybe games have conditioned me to think, I thought, that's fine. I'll throw him.
Class and,
it'll explode, right? And then I'll use him to attack them. No, you throw him. I mean, hey, fair enough, actually. He exploded. I don't know why I thought I'd just carry on and he'd be fine. He's now what would you call it, on the subs bench, I suppose, but you have to recover him from, like, I forgot that constantly, so I would be like, yeah, I'm just going to move everyone around, I throw the oh shit,
no, dead now.
That's him gone then, he's gone for got to pay for him to come back now. And that's the only thing for me so far playing it that I felt is a little on the, it's not so much even a newcomer thing, like so when people faint, I suppose, are eliminated on your team, they go to like the doctors, and you which is just saying it, I like this game a lot. You have to pay for them to be revived. You can pay if you've lost health or mana, you can no, it's MP, isn't it? Mana's a separate thing, I think. See, this is why I'm getting confused.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so you have to pay currency, in-game currency to be specific, to revive them or just heal yourself, and it felt quite mean. And I don't know if that changes as you play more of it, but it felt quite tight. It was like...
I feel like, especially in the early game, I do think it is quite cruel in that regard. And just in general, compared to, like I say, the last game in the series I played was obviously the last game, Disgaea 6. And I didn't really grind a lot in Disgaea 6. I just sort of played through the levels, and it just it never really felt like it was this uber challenge. Like, I maybe ended up grinding a bit, but that was at the point where I'd unlocked where you can set your characters to do stuff for using the AI, so you can basically just auto play the game eventually. And that's the same in this one, but it actually costs to do it in this game instead of just being this free thing. But yeah, whole other thing. But essentially, like, that was a way of just, like, getting your characters higher leveled up. But in terms of actually dying, I don't ever remember it being an issue in Disgaea 6, and I don't remember ever having money issues in Disgaea 6, and in Disgaea 7, especially at the beginning. Like, there would be a few times where I'd play through a new level and I'd be like, I don't have the money to get my team back, so I'm going to have to play an early level a couple of times.
That's why I went and grinded, because I was at the point where I was like, I had 3 available characters, I think, or 4, and I wanted to progress the story. I had the samurai guy. I'm terrible with names anyway, but I had the samurai guy who's like really overpowered early on, intentionally so, I think. And I was like, I have to just go and grind just to be able to now revive these guys, which maybe is the game's way of telling me to. I suppose maybe.
I think that's also the case.
Maybe it's. Yeah, I mean, I haven't got far enough to see it, but some of the silliness that I'm referring to, I know from your review and from screenshots and stuff, is the giganticism stuff. Is that the correct?
Yeah, Jumbify.
Okay.
Called.
Yeah, I might be thinking of Pokemon, where because Pokemon
I think
did
that's
that
right.
a few games ago. Yeah, so can you, as someone who hasn't yet seen that, what is that?
So you fill a meter in the same way you do, because there's already the hell meter.
Yes,
I think,
I've seen the hell meter.
Which can make certain characters go into like a super powerful mode, and just a standard RPG superpower mode that you can build up. And then Jumbify is kind of like bigger than that, I guess, in more ways than one. But when you Jumbify a character, they go to the side of the map. They don't fit on the map anymore. There's just their massive body next to a stage that's just made out of a grid, and they can use like different attacks to just attack the whole grid. And it's very silly and very cool. It never stops feeling awesome to just do that, but also enemies do that, and when enemies do that, it's awful. So like the first time that happens, when you first unlock Jumbify, it's on this stage where there's already an enemy who is doing it essentially. And the first time I played that stage and got all my characters out and like did my first attack on like the little weenie enemies to try and get myself to being able to match this enemy's giant size, that enemy just did one attack and everyone died, and then like our game over, and that was it.
Oh, wow.
So like it was this moment of like, oh shit, okay, this is going to be a pretty big deal. But I mean, after that first encounter, you start to get used to it, and when you can do it as well, it makes sense. It is actually, it's not an unbalanced mechanic necessarily. It's just something you need to account for. But it's just like a cool new gimmick for this game, I guess. But it's one that's an interesting addition, and one that you have to work around as a returning fan, because obviously you've got all the things to learn. So we needed to have something too, I guess.
But I think it's interesting because you mentioned like after the first time, you're fine with it, as it were. I think that's quite an old-fashioned thing as well, in that it's sort of trial by fire, and I think that's because like the first boss in this game, again quite early on, I really struggled with. Like I think I died 4 times before working out my way around it, And I was at first a bit confused, like, this is tough for early. This is early. I've been doing stuff where it's like I've not been taking a scratch, and now I'm getting wiped quick.
Yeah.
But I think, again, that's maybe just me not recognising the old school nature of some of it. Like, and I think what you've described with the Jumbify stuff, in the same way that you get wiped and then you have to strategize and work around it, is kind of that old-fashioned, this is how we used to do things. You would die and try again, and then that's like old-fashioned video games. And I guess Disgaea has been around a long time that it's allowed to do that. I guess because I'm jumping in at a 7th game in 2023, I didn't expect it. And there's enough there that I kept going back, if that makes sense. I didn't just go like, right, I've had enough, I'm done. I did want to see, because I don't think what I've played of the story is like mind-blowingly good. It's fine. It might get better. I'm sure it does, but there's enough story, if that makes sense, that made me want to be like, I do kind of want to keep going. It's a great shame because I don't think I'll get a lot of chance to play much more of this now.
Yeah.
But it's a great shame because I'm really enjoying it. I've forgotten I think you gave it 8.5, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I think it's probably my favorite game in the series so far.
Yeah, and I can see it. Like, I would like to. I mean, I don't know how many times I'm going to say this year, or any of us will say it this year. But if someone could invent some sort of time machine that pauses time, even just for a week, so I could just sit down and play. I mean, I'd like to play that Cyberpunk DLC, but now I'm like,
yeah, that's gone now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of gone. I mean, I tell you what, the weird thing is, I know you're not a football fan, but I saw they release, like a lot of games now, you can pay for the early version, get it early.
Yeah.
I was watching TV yesterday, as we record, saw an advert for FC24, and that's officially out the day we're recording this. It's today, so it's officially out if you want to just go in a shop and purchase the game. And even my son and I were like, that feels like ages ago, doesn't it? It's like, it literally isn't out yet at the time we were watching this advert. But let's move on to a game that's kind of passed me by. But when I was again reading your review of it on GodIsAGeek.com, I was like, "Ooh, this looks kind of interesting." So, El Paso, Elsewhere, is that right?
El Paso, Elsewhere is the game we're talking about. So, El Paso, Elsewhere is, if we're going to be quite reductive, but to be honest, it's like they've labeled it as a spiritual successor, so kind of what they want, I guess. It's basically like PS2 old Max Payne games, like the original 2 Max Payne games. It's pretty much that. It's a third-person shooter where you dive around with the left trigger and go into slow motion and shoot the shit out of demons and stuff with the right trigger. Now, it is demons and not like bad men, which was who were officially the bad guys on the Max Payne games.
That's right, the bad men. Yeah, the bad men. Yeah,
everyone knows that. In this, it changes it up a little bit, but I mean, that's the gameplay loop is pretty much that Max Payne thing, and it's just something where you think about it and you go, that's just sort of stopped, didn't it? Diving through the air and shooting people in slow motion. That just went.
Well, yeah, because the Max Payne thing is weird, isn't it? Because it was Remedy. But then, like, Max Payne 3 was Rockstar.
That's right.
And I'll never quite fully understand what that was all about. But, like, I can't think of many games. I guess, like, no, I was going to say GTA. But they're not. They're not really that. Is it? It's like gritty and dark. Is it? It's not just the gameplay that it's.
No, it's not just the game. It's even the story, which admittedly is the best part of this game, and I'll talk a bit more about in depth. But the story, especially at the start, is like it's told the way that like Max Payne was told. So you've got this protagonist called James Savage, who is the best name.
I mean,
for a
look,
protagonist.
If you're aping Max Payne, you kind of have to do that. Like, I mean, the only thing they could have probably done better is done the Simpsons gag and be like, "I'm Max Power" or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, so James Savage.
Yeah, so
he's like that.
It's quite good. It made me chuckle every time I just like remembered again what my main character's name was. But like he does that whole thing of like there'll be. Everyone needs a moment for James Savage, don't they?
Because like I've started thinking about the whole Max Payne thing and thinking like it just wouldn't fly now. It just wouldn't fly unless you were absolutely doing a parody of yourself almost. It wouldn't fly for someone to go, "Hi, I'm Max Payne." Like, it just wouldn't. And yet this is James Savage's game now. So.
Yeah. And but back in the day, we
Great.
accepted names like Max Payne, and that's just what we
It never
thought
even
was
occurred
okay.
to me
We
it
thought
was
that was
weird.
cool.
Like even back
No,
in the
me
day, I
neither.
never stopped to be like, that's a bit on the nose, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
so is he
But
savage? Is it violent like that?
he's I mean, I guess so. He shoots a lot of things, but he also like in terms of cutscenes, like he'll even do that sort of like gritty narration over the
Oh,
top of what's
brilliant!
going on. The full on. So he's like he'll go into a room and he's like, I entered the hotel room. The stench of gunpowder in the air. Pills were scattered across the floor like an
Oh my
upturned bag
god!
of Skittles.
You're making me
Inviting
want
me
to play
taste the
it.
rainbow.
You're really making
Yeah.
me want to play it. I've got to be honest with you.
It is, but it is really like, especially that first moment where I was realizing what was happening. I was like, "Holy shit! This is something where I didn't realize I missed like
Yeah.
these old, over the top, kind of stupid games that also, you know, took themselves kind of seriously at the same time." But yeah, I was really into it. But then, sort of, the more of it I played, I kind of realized that the way they had this game set up, it doesn't really like work mechanically. Like when you dive through the air and go into slow motion to shoot these enemies, like it's, you know, you slow down, you get a good chance to get a few shots in, but pretty much all the enemies, especially early on, are like melee enemies. So you dive through the air, you shoot like, and there's like 4 running at you. You shoot like 2 of them, and then, you know, you land on the floor and the slowdown stops. And the other 2 just run up to you and start slapping you while you're like on your belly, just sort of on the ground, and they just sort of batter you a bit, and it doesn't feel like what you did was helpful. And like if you just sort of run backwards and shoot, it works better. Or there's a button to turn on the slow motion without diving, so you just do that. But it sort of lacks that fun of diving, because diving's great. You don't want to not dive in a game where when you dive, you're in slow motion, you've got 2 handles, and you just sort of pow, pow, pow through the air. So it is a little bit of a shame. And then the levels are a little bit flat as well. Like it's like in this, it's set in a motel, and you're going after your ex-girlfriend, who is Dracula, the like big boss of vampires, and you were dating at some point, but now you know she's going to try and destroy the world. So you're trying to stop her from doing this ritual at a motel in the desert in El Paso. And every level of the game is just you go down a different floor of this hotel. And like visually, they're really cool, because it's like as you go deeper into this motel, like the like world starts to distort, because they're doing this like weird ritual. So there'll be like furniture flying through the air, and like it'll be all this creepy stuff. Like one level, you just open like the doors to the lobby of this hotel, and it's a graveyard instead of like a lobby. So it's kind of like a cool setting, but all the maps are just very like, it's a maze. You have to get some keys. You might have to rescue some hostages, and like it's a long game as well. Like it goes on for quite a long time. And I mean, it might not feel that long, but I think it's a lot of like it might not be that long in terms of like hours, but in terms of like, I think it's like 40 levels or something. So when every time you go to a new stage, and like you realize you're sort of doing a similar shooting enemies in a maze, and then the enemy variety, especially towards the beginning of the game, again, like you'll just be fighting the same thing that's running at you and trying to slap you, and there's not really like you don't really have to do much to work around that. Like if they're coming to hit you, you just walk backwards and shoot them, and maybe go into slow motion. So it's like it does a lot that's really cool. And the story, which I mentioned before, like it ends up being really cool. All these like different scenes you get between the levels of James talking about his ex-girlfriend and their past, and like you can tell he's like getting in his own head as he sort of gets further down and realizing he's going to be confronting this person that, you know, at some point he like, you know, was really fond of, but also is an all-powerful vampire who's trying to destroy the world. And like the narrative side of it is really interesting, and that was the side of it I expected to maybe be the most throwaway, and it turned out to be the thing that I ended up liking the most about the game. So it's kind of a weird one. I was expecting like sort of arcadey stupid shooting to be the thing that I came away from, and I actually came away thinking like that was kind of a cool story they told, with a character called James Savage going to meet his vampire girlfriend.
Yeah,
but
good. Still funny.
Yeah, it is. But it's an interesting game. I like that it exists, because someone brought back slow motion diving through the air and shooting, and that's something that I hope weird. If someone else steals that as a thing that's like the new thing to come back, but makes it a little bit more satisfying to play.
But I wonder if you could do it in a, because I'm like in an actual like modern AAA looking video game. You know, like I wonder if
Yeah.
you could do it, or if it would, because you know you'd have these ultra realistic graphics, and then like shooting people as you slide through the air, and I wonder if it
Yeah.
could work modern wise. I wonder if it is sort of intrinsically tied to that kind of retro look as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It does have that retro look as well, actually, as an
Yeah.
extra aside. It looks like it is of that sort of PS2 era of game where it's like it's a little bit like it's not particularly realistic, but you can tell
No.
what's going on past the point of where characters look like they're made out of like Duplo. And yeah, it's a cool game. Maybe not
Yeah.
the best game I've played in a long time, but cool.
It's interesting you mentioned about like knowing what's going on, because we can talk a bit about Cocoon as well before we get to listen to correspondence. I haven't finished Cocoon, but I played like 70 something percent. It's not that long of a game. This is initially one of those. Again, we're talking about being reductive, but it's an easy comparison and people understand it. Limbo, Inside, Little Nightmares.
Okay, yeah.
Initially, the feel is it's one of those, certainly atmospherically. And you play as this little weird insect thing, and you're walking around, and it's basically left stick to move, and A button or cross or whatever button you're playing, you know, the action button for everything. And initially I was like, well, I wonder if they're going to add more, like if the controls will, you know, now it's square, and it actually doesn't. But it's this world. I think what I really like Cocoon, but what I like the Inside and the Limbos and the Little Nightmares, but I'm never quite as blown away by them. I always feel they are more of a narrative experience, and that's absolutely fine, and you know, no issue with that whatsoever. With Cocoon, I feel it's more interactive. It's more, if I was to make a more of a comparison, it's like to those games, kind of what Sea of Stars is to those games, in that everything's quite tactile. And there's no like voiceover or anything telling you what to do. You just start walking around and realise that a button does things, and like all the puzzles are environmental and interactive. And then maybe get I mean, I've literally still got it here. Like I got a piece of paper out and I started drawing bad symbols because that it's one of them games where you know roughly what you got to do, but you need to like kind of, you know, work it out. Which I really kind of like, and it's a difficult one to describe because you go into this world and you do a boss fight, and the boss fights often will give you unique mechanics. Like without spoiling too much, the first one involves you. It's kind of bullet helly, not extreme, like a mild bullet hell, and you have to get around that element of it. And there's another one where you have to like survive a bit until you can get a certain flower which lets you get jettison up into the air with the water underneath you, and that's how you attack it. So it's quite unique in each way that the boss encounters work. What you do is you end up in this world, you jump into this like glowing marble style orb which is the world, and then after you've done that world, you can get to you find another marble, and you can jump into that world, which is like the water world, and then you can jump out, and you actually end up having to take the marbles into each other, and it gets quite weirdly complicated because by going into them, you can use this world marble thing as an object you can put on something, you know, to interact with.
Okay.
But it's really difficult to describe. You can, by moving them around and stuff, you can jump in and out of them to solve puzzles. By like, there's one where you can't get past a beam that's constantly going past. So if you put the world and the other world in that situation, you can jump into it to jump out to get the other one to get back in to bypass the puzzle, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't.
I think I understand. Just
you sort of basically you're going in and out of worlds, but you carry the worlds on your back. These little marbles, you stick them on your back, and you can walk around with them. And each one has like its own unique thing, and it's just really good. Like narrative-wise, I haven't finished it. It's interesting, and there's lots of mechanical stuff that's cool, and the puzzles are all. It doesn't seem to like sit on an idea and go like, oh, we're just going to do this puzzle for ages. It's almost like, do you remember that puzzle we used ages ago? We're going to use that mechanic again now. And they also seem to twist it. Like there's like a glyphs or symbols thing. Doesn't tell you this. There's just 5 little things on a floor. You walk into them and they do like a little chime, and you realise, okay, I've got to do these in an order. What order? How do I work it out? You find a switch that you pull it, and this tower goes up and down. And on the tower, there are these 5 symbols. One's at the top, next one down, so on. So you realise, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That same puzzle comes back in the second world, only there's no tower. This time you have to find the symbols, and they're just like big, it's like distant artwork almost, and they're like statues, and you go, well, hang on, that one's higher up, and then you go, no, because they're the same height, so that doesn't work. And then you realise, it's just left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they reuse the puzzle, but they change how the puzzle works, so it retains that sort of freshness. And yeah, there's very little not to like about it. It's just really, it's one of those you sit down and you go, I think I'll just have a quick play of this, do a little bit, and you just find yourself, because it has these boss fights. So it's a very sort of danger-free game until you get to these boss fights, and even the way they handle that stuff is clever. Like if you do die in a boss fight, you kind of get booted straight out of the world. Like you fly all the way out this marble, and you're like, oh bloody hell, and you have to go back in and go and do it again, and even that's cleverly done. But the boss fights themselves are like quite different, where you've got this almost sedate yet very tactile nature of walking around this world, interacting with stuff. Like you even have to pull a weird creature to make a bridge that you can climb across. Then all of a sudden, this sedate nature has become like a frantic boss fight where it's bullet helling you, and so it's not difficult. I don't think. I don't want people to think, oh, bullet hell. It's not like brutally hard, because it's a very. It's one of those games. It doesn't. The reason I think I've gelled with it more is that I think Limbo and Inside and I think Little Nightmares as well are animation over feel. In that they are very, so too, you know what I mean? Like they are really animated games, deliberately so, to give an atmosphere. But you pay for that a little bit in that you have to turn, you have to sort of, and the turn has to be animated. You have to, because it's a person.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it's slightly more isometric viewpoint, and it feels more like a platform game in terms of how quickly the left stick moves your character around. So it's a little bit more responsive to me. I'm going to go back and finish it. I want to say, I might be wrong. I want to say, is it in Game Pass? I have to look that up.
Sure.
I want to say I imagined it was in Game Pass, but I'm going to just quickly
because I want to play it now.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will play it and not like it. The first headline is from Pure Xbox. New Xbox Game Pass title Cocoon is getting outstanding reviews, and I think at the time we record, I think it's out today. I believe. Yeah, it's just got that kind of. It's like I really like the Limbo. I liked Inside a lot. I like Little Nightmares, and I'm looking forward to the third one with the co-op and stuff. I think I've read they put the co-op in it, but there is a thing of where I'm playing that for the story.
Yeah. Say
60% to 40% is the gameplay, because it's all fine. It's physics-based puzzler, and this has all the physics-based stuff and all the tactile nature, but it just feels more responsive and more. Less like one of those, and I believe like the person behind it is like one of the gameplay designers of, I think, Limbo and all that. I think. Again, I'd have to check.
I feel like I read that.
I think Chris mentioned it in his review. I think it's. I don't know how to say the person's name. Jep Carlson. But yeah, like this person knows how to make a game feel good.
Yeah.
6.5 years of work now, has a release date. No pressure at all, the tweet says. So, like, yeah. But no, like, it's delivered. Like, Cocoon has really delivered. Like, it's not a game I feel like it's a really tough time for an indie. Like, you are 2 weeks ahead of, like, well, we're hitting the month where all first-party publishers have an exclusive title in Forza, Spider-Man, and Mario Wonder.
And that's not everything that's coming out that month, that's for sure.
Not even close. Although, what I will say is, like, Cocoon, I think I was at 70% plus after, like, 2.5 sittings. So this is not a game you have to sit down. It's not a Disgaea where you have to go, I've got to dedicate this month. You could knock this out in a couple of nights comfortably, or even in a couple of sessions. And I really, if it's in Game Pass, like they say it is, I really, really hope people play it, because it's such a weirdly fascinating game, and I think the puzzles are very clever. Like it's one of those where straight away I'm playing it and the puzzles are like, it. I don't want to overhype it, but like, I mean, what big puzzle games that you think are like, I'm guessing people are like Portal 2 and the geniusness of those puzzles. Like it really does feel like a clever video game, and it feels really nice to play itself. So Yeah, go play it. It's on Game Pass, everyone.
Nice.
That's Cocoon.
And now I have to.
Yeah, I would recommend it. I mean, I think Chris gave it a 9, and I totally agree with that. Like, it's a really good video game. Let's do some listener correspondence. I'll play the jingle, me.
Chris Hyde, listener correspondence. It's time. It's time. Chris Hyde.
So Chris isn't here, but obviously we're going to play the jingle just to play the jingle. And these are from Mikhail, and he's got some for you and some for me. And I'll start, if I can, by reading yours. And he says, have you played Fate Samurai Remnant yet? It looks like a really good action RPG with Musu elements.
I haven't. I do think it looks good. I think Chris reviewed it, didn't he?
Chris White, yeah.
So we have a review of it, but yeah, that wasn't me that played that one. And I do think it looks good, but it's one of those games where it looks good, but when there's so much to play, I can't imagine me suddenly making time for that. Like, especially when, you've got something like, I mean, that's an action RPG with Musu elements. Probably takes quite a lot of time.
Gonna say probably a long one, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, if I could sneak in a Cocoon and an extra 5 hours with Baldur's Gate 3, that's probably what I'll do, because there's a lot to be playing, and next month, which is only a couple of days away, is not going to let up on the games, is it?
Well, I'm going to jump ahead to a question actually, and then come back to one, because he also asks, "How's Baldur's Game of the Year 3 going?" Just 2 months left for the Game of the Year pods, nearly. First of all, stop reminding people of the Game of the Year pods, please.
Don't upset him.
Stop it.
It's a lot of work for him. He needs to not think about that.
To be clear, I really enjoy them, but let's worry about it a little bit down the line, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
How's Baldur's Gate going?
I mean, I've played like a couple more hours this week.
So you are knocking through it, just like
I am
gingerly.
At a speed that is not acceptable for when the Game of the Year podcast starts.
It's faster than I'm playing it.
I mean, that's true. But yeah, I got a couple of hours in this week, and I enjoyed those couple of hours. And I had my first time where the party died, so I've experienced loss in the game.
You've
now.
Played it all then.
So now, I'm pretty much there. It was actually quite good when they died. There was a few elements that were interesting that happened, because there's always interesting stuff that happens in that game. Every time something happens, I think, oh, I bet like 95% of players didn't see this, and that's the whole game. And I still love everything about that game pretty much. I just need to actually make time for it, and at some point you'll get into it and find
this is the worry though. But that's the worry, that if I play it, I'm planning to sit down on PS5 and play it. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's where I get most of my gaming done, and it's not on Xbox. I don't mean on PS5. I mean on console, on a sofa, on my ass. If it gets me, we got a big problem. We got a big problem on our hands. I mean, this question just goes hand in hand, really. He says, "Have you any thoughts on Dragon Quest Die? Is it Die?
Yeah.
Infinity Strat. No, I'm not reading what he said. He's called it Infinity Trash, and that's not because I thought have I typoed it? I thought no, I just copied the question and pasted it. So, you got any thoughts on Dragon Quest Die if you're playing
it? I have it downloaded, so that's.
You haven't actually got around. No, I did wonder if you started it.
Yeah, it has a nice title card on the PS5.
Oh, well, that's enough for me.
Yeah, there we go. 10 out of 10.
Now that you've played Disgaea 7 and you liked it a lot, do you feel like playing any prior game you missed in the series?
Okay, so I've played Disgaea 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
How does that
7.
happen?
So
there's
Disgaea
one
5.
choice.
So there's a Disgaea game called D2, which is a sequel to Disgaea 1 instead. So it's kind of like continuing a story of like a lot of people's fan favorite games, and I didn't play that either. So I guess I could have picked that too, but I should probably just pick 5, and then I've played all the numbered ones, haven't I?
I don't understand how that's happened. How have you?
I don't really. I think it was. I played the first 2 on PS2, like when I was like a teenager or whatever. So I had the time for it then, and then 3 and 4 I had on the Vita, so it was a nice handy handheld sort of place to have that. Yeah, seriously.
Oh.
And then I think by the time I got to having like a Switch and realized that even Disgaea sort of existed on that platform, it was kind of like a bit too late to catch up on it. So it was one where I only really thought about it as being a console game and was like, I don't really know when I'll get time to fit in some massive fucking game on a console. So it just sort of was the one I missed. So I guess I'd check that out. I've heard very good things about it. So, I mean, I think most people thought that was the high point of the series before 7, or at least, like, you know, I guess we'll see if they change their minds with 7 when it releases. But, yeah, I guess that would be a good one to try.
Okay, he says, did you watch any Tokyo Game Show streams or announcements, and have you got any highlights, if so?
Not that I can think of. I don't think I really watched a lot, to be honest. I mean, there are things that I might have seen announced that I didn't realise were from that, but I wasn't paying attention. But no, I can't think of anything specific. It's just something I didn't necessarily spot this week, I guess. There's always too much going on and too much to play.
That's true. And the last one for you is, he says, I haven't watched footage for El Paso elsewhere yet, but people compare it to Max Payne, which we've just done. Would you recommend he plays Max Payne first?
That's a weird thing to think about, just going back to, like, the original Max Payne games now. But, like, I mean, it's a hard one. I remember liking them.
But they'd be like old-fashioned 4:3 aspect ratio and everything, wouldn't they?
So yeah, I don't think
they're old games. I remember playing them on PC, but they're old games.
They are. So I don't. And then instead of that, I guess you've got Max Payne 3, but that never really felt quite the same as 1 and 2. Like, I enjoyed the game, but it didn't feel like it was quite the same style that El Paso was going for, really. Like, they were obviously aping those original games over the slightly more modern Rockstar one. So I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'd be interested if Mick decided on this advice to go and play Max Payne and see what he thinks, because that'd be a weird thing for someone to experience in 2023 for the first time.
2001's Max Payne, 2001.
Yeah. Go play a 22-year-old game and report back, please.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Have you got the doc up that you can do mine for me?
I sure do.
Fantastic.
I can do this. Okay. So, first up we have, would you say Cocoon is one of Annapurna's best games in years?
I'm looking down a list of them now. They have got a lot. They do a lot of publishing these days. Like, there's a lot of... They
do.
You know, Neon White, I think, I want to say, was Annapurna published.
Oh, shit.
And that was a really good game.
Yeah, it was.
Solar Ash is a good game, and that was them. I'm just looking down the list here. The Pathless was good. Kentucky Route Zero, I never quite gelled with.
Yeah, same. But 12 minutes.
Yeah, I skipped past that. Probably. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Let's say yeah. I mean, I there's some here that I'm not remembering them being involved with, like Telling Lies, the Sambalo game.
Oh yeah.
It says that they published it, so I don't know if that's a specific region. I don't remember that being in, but I mean, but then they didn't develop this one, Cocoon. This is by Geometric Interactive, so it's you know they've yeah, I think it is. I think it's a really, really good game. I really do think it's a good game, and I'm a bit of a sucker for sometimes when especially when it's busy and there's lots coming out. I'm a bit of a sucker for those games that you can kind of just play and enjoy and be like, yeah, and I'm done, and that's really cool. Sometimes, you know, yeah, yes,
nice. Did you try Lamplighters League? Thoughts on it?
Yeah, I did. I played on Xbox, and I can only speak like currently, but at the moment, I would, if you're going to play it on Xbox, I would maybe hold fire because there were quite a lot of bugs. I had one where I just was like kicked out and lost my progression through a story, and it was really early on. I was like, I'm almost in tutorial territory, and I've now got to play all this again because of it's like I can see it's a good game. It's an XCOM style, you know, strategy game like that, and I always like them. And I like the style of the game. I like the aesthetic. I like the characters. And I'm really glad, like, hearing Mick on the site on GodIsAGeek.com, his review of it, he like really enjoyed the game. He played on PC while I was on Xbox. I was playing on Xbox, and I was like, I'm going to stop, and I'll come back because it was not in the best state, I don't think. And your mileage may vary, so. Like, this isn't like definitely don't, and it is a good game, but I found the Xbox version it needs a little bit more work. So I like the game in in theory and in concept, but I did feel like it was like I had lots of bugs. So that's my thoughts on it. But like, just hold fire if you're going to play it on it. I mean, again, it might be Game Pass actually. I think it's Game Pass.
It's Game Pass for
so
sure.
fuck
like,
it. Actually,
I mean, I guess you don't have to hold fire, do you?
Just play it. Fine. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
But don't moan that you've wasted time on it because I've told you. Just maybe.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he's asked this question because he surely knows the answer to it, unless there's some sort of sneaky Mick reason that I'm not understanding. But you never know with Mick. He's a little trickster, is our Mick. But will you be playing Spider-Man 2?
So I think actually this is genuinely him being nice and giving me an opportunity to promo the fact that we are playing Spider-Man 2, and you can come back and read our review nearer the time. I don't have the details to hand, but we are allowed to say we have Spider-Man 2. So yes is the answer. I will be playing Spider-Man 2.
Oh, nice. Oh, well, I feel a bit bad for calling him a sneaky trickster.
No, I might be wrong. Listen, you as well as like you said, there could well be something there that I'm not seeing, but I can only think of that. I can only think of that. So,
well, okay. Thoughts on Lies of P's patch?
So, from what I understand, they've made sort of some bosses easier. And my only thoughts on that is that I wish they'd done that pre-release because of the Mick Fraser texts that I have. We've mentioned this before. The texts when he's playing a Souls game, or listen, I've done it too, so I'm not innocent entirely in this situation. But he's definitely worse than I am. He sends a plethora of texts like not abusive to me, but abusive to the game, full of expletives and like the sort of undertone being he's going to throw his entire house out the window somehow, not just the console, and then 3 seconds later, done it. But that said, even in our Discord, like I heard people talking about certain bosses that were really hard, and I think that was one of the ones Mick was mentioning. So I don't know if that's been patched, but being honest, like the fact that they've had to balance it after the fact to make bosses easier kind of lends a bit of credence to the idea that maybe just put fucking difficulty options in your game.
That'd fucking fix it, wouldn't it?
Like you could just put it on easy and it wouldn't be an issue. And if you didn't want that, you didn't have to. You could just play it on normal, or maybe just patch it so that this is now ultra hard. Like I'm not. I don't have all the answers, but it did cross my mind a bit.
I also feel like now there's going to be people who are like, oh, well, I beat this game before.
I beat it before, absolutely. Or there'll be the other group of people who are angry they're making a hard game easier. Because I do think it's one of the harder Souls-likes, Born-likes, whatever you want to call them.
Sounds like it is from what I've sort of generally heard, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, no, I think it just opens up more conversation and more interesting thoughts, doesn't it, really? These games.
Yeah,
they always seem to do it. It's not just like everyone seems to like buff and debuff, and like even Remnant's done it, like Remnant 2. All these games that are sort of challenging games, just they're constantly buffing, and it's like, but these aren't like that used to be the sort of thing that would happen in an MMO, and now it happens with like ostensibly single player games.
Yeah.
But what are they? What was the feedback there? Is it community feedback? Is it someone internally? I'd love to know. Like what made them go, we need to dial that down, that up, make that more. You know, I'd love to. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just interesting.
One.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Have you felt like going back to Diablo 4 recently?
Well, I want to flip this around and ask you the same question because I keep seeing it. It's on my PS5 still, and I didn't dislike the game. But
I am in exactly the same situation. Every so often I see it's on the PS5, and I'm like, Diablo 4. That did exist. But like, I mean, I enjoyed it well enough. I kind of thought it felt like it didn't really feel like it changed anything from 3 to 4 to me from the early stages. I was like, it was one of those where I was excited to play this new entry in a series where like every time there's been a new game in that series, it's been like massive like changes. Like I like Diablo 2 more than Diablo 3, for example, just because I played it a lot when I was younger, and like it was like this like landmark PC gaming thing for me. But even playing Diablo 3, I always enjoyed it because it was such a different game. And like when I played Diablo 4, I felt like I'd just turned on Diablo 3 and it was like a level I hadn't played before, basically. So it's one of those where like if I had like a friend coming over for a night and he said like, oh, I'd really like to play Diablo 4 co-op when I come over. It's not like I'd be like, oh no, can we play something else? I'd be like, oh, that'd be
100%.
fucking awesome. I bet I'd have a great time. But like,
I really thought this would be a game we as a team would just like spend it, because it's a perfect game to just shoot the shit and have a whiskey
don't
on
really
the go
have
or something. And but like it just, I don't know why it hasn't. I thought some of what Diablo 4 did was a step back from 3, because I love 3. 3 is, I think it's a fantastic game. So how I felt like going back to it, no, because if I felt like going back to it, I would. Like, there's no reason you couldn't just spend an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I got to act 2, 3, and I was like, I just didn't feel. Other stuff comes out all the time, and that's fine.
Oh,
but I just didn't feel that pull to go back. I felt like I kind of seen enough of Diablo 4.
For sure. I think for me as well, I have it on PS5, and I think if I had it on like a handheld, for example,
Absolutely,
I think if I could pick it up and play an hour on like while I was like before go to sleep in bed or something, like I think I'd absolutely have rinsed that game. I think I'd have I maybe even finished it more than once. But like if I have to set it down on the console and like take up big screen time and take up time that I could be playing Baldur's Gate 3 or Final Fantasy 16, like it's just no way it's ever going to match that. So 100%. I guess it's Vampire Survivors in bed for me, and that's it.
Yeah,
nice. Last question. Tried now. Okay, do we say AKI or Aki for this character in Street Fighter?
I thought it was AKI. Because it's always got, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, Aki would sound bad as a name though as well.
Yeah,
so
it's not great.
I like to think tried AKI in Street Fighter 6. Yeah,
really briefly, yes. She seemed interesting, but also straight away, I can feel like she's not one of those kinds of characters I would use as much. Yeah. But she does seem interesting, and she seems like people will get real good with her. There's seems like a lot of opportunity to almost Mortal Kombat style juggle, not juggle, but mix up a lot of combos with some of her poison stuff. It looks like, I'm looking forward to the next DLC characters whenever they do put them out, because like I did try a bit of Rashid as well, again very briefly, but I played as him in 5, and he wasn't my bag sort of thing, so it's like back to Ken. It's like I have tried like really briefly. Like I think Sean's going to play more and write something up, and I do love the way they're doing the DLC. I love that it's not just here's a new fighter. I love that it's here's a new fighter and they're incorporated into World Tour, and there's like now 20 masters or whatever in that game. I love that they're doing that.
That is very cool.
It's just so mad that they've done that. It really is, and I'm a big fan of that. It makes you feel like what you're paying for, you're getting more than you would used to, if that makes sense. Like, so yeah, that wasn't the question, I guess. Yeah, very briefly, yeah.
Okay, and we have one more question that's for both of us.
Oh yeah, McPoo. What's for breakfast?
Yeah, he knew that this was being recorded in the morning, so we got a breakfast question. What did you have for breakfast, or what are you having for breakfast?
I'm probably going to have some Weetabix.
Oh, well.
And I'm going to not say any more than that, because my Weetabix methodology is apparently wrong. No, I am. Fuck it, I am. I'm going to use this platform.
And you have to, yeah.
I had never had Weetabix before until I met my wife, so if anyone's going to be blamed for this... It's not me.
Wow.
No, that's genuinely true, and she was having it, and I think it probably was the advent of chocolate Weetabix that made me think, okay, I'll try some chocolate Weetabix. 2 Weetabix in a bowl, drizzle some milk across, microwave for a minute, mix it all up into it so it's kind of porridgey. Or if you want, you could, I guess, heat the milk up first, and then same difference from different angles. I've been told by a few people in our Discord that that's weird. I don't understand how it's weird. Yeah, no, I just don't understand how you would want to eat any other way. So I've been watching, for example, right? I'm a big fan of Taskmaster, and recently, are you aware of the show's existence? I'm sure. I think
I know how it works.
Yeah, so Taskmaster has been done so well, they franchised it off to other countries, and there's Taskmaster New Zealand, Australia, there's like Sweden. Taskmaster New Zealand is now available to watch in the UK. People have found ways to do it, but I had never watched it. And in one of these series, right, there's a task involving what they call wheat biscuits. It's a TV show, they can't call them Weetabix.
Yeah.
And basically, this task involved if you had to build a castle out of wheat biscuits, right?
Wheat biscuits.
And they would give you extra wheat biscuits if you ate a wheat biscuit raw. Okay. Now, why would that be a thing if they weren't horribly dry husk-based foods?
Oh yeah, that part I at least sort of kind of understand.
Like, so I
wouldn't
don't get
have a
why
raw
it's weird.
Weetabix.
No, but then someone was even using. They managed to realise they could use milk, and it was still like they were like dipping it. It's just crunching into this like. It's like hay. I mean, no, I know it's not quite shredded wheat style.
No, but
like,
I get
I
your
don't
meaning.
get
Sure.
why you'd want to not have it sort of porridged up, I guess is the.
Yeah.
I
so
don't-
so how I have Weetabix, and I must admit I'm not a Weetabix guy who has them all the time. But when I have Weetabix,
Sorry,
I'll
just to be clear, I don't quaff multiple Weetabix all day, every day. This is like
Yeah.
a couple of times. It's not my. I would rather toast, but I'm going to have Weetabix because. Well, I thought it would be good for the chat, but like
Nice. So yeah, how I'd have Weetabix
Yes.
is I'd have them in a bowl,
yes.
preferably a bowl that has quite a flat base. I think that's quite important.
Okay,
by the
yeah,
way,
yep,
just
that's
a
fine.
rounded one.
Yeah.
I'd have 2 Weetabix flat. I'd get like a tablespoon of sugar, and
Just-
I'd have
yep.
that resting on the top of
Yep.
each of them.
Yep.
And then I'd pour cold milk over the top, so it's sort of like slightly molds the sugar a little bit to a kind of like liquidy form almost. A
Yep.
little bit of a change of consistency in the sugar, and then there'd be milk in the bottom. That would mean that the bottom sort of like half of a Weetabix would be getting that soggier consistency.
Right.
And then when I have my spoonful of Weetabix, I've got the top half that has the crunch and the sogginess sort of combined. So you get a little bit of the texture, and it's not warm because I don't want it warm.
That's
And
fine.
it's nice. That's how I have it.
But
Anyway,
the
that's
idea
how
of having
Weetabix
both
seems to me.
consistencies is horrifying to me. The idea of having this crunch followed by this like squelch is like that's horrifying to me. Whereas I could just go, I'd rather just go right. Just give me a Weetabix and I'll eat it like toast. I think than having it like partially
Buttered.
Yeah, they do a lot of weird stuff with Weetabix. Apparently, there's lots of recipes, shall we say, for Weetabix.
Yeah.
What are
Not
you
sure
having for
about
breakfast, or have you had for breakfast? Sorry,
I've had
That
my
was the
breakfast
question.
already.
Oh, I see.
So for my breakfast last night, as a nice treat, because it's been a while, I ordered in a Papa John's. So
Oh.
my breakfast this morning was a few slices of leftover Papa John's pizza. So I'd gone for a half and half, and one half of my Papa John's pizza was the one they do where it's cheese, tomatoes, like chopped up tomatoes and pesto. So
Okay.
the drizzle of pesto over the top, and that's one half. And the other half was their spicy veg one, which is green peppers, jalapenos, and red peppers with like hot sauce drizzled on it, which I'll admit for early morning was maybe a little
Yeah.
bit of a shock to the system. But nice, yeah. I went for Papa John's for breakfast. So
I mean, to be clear, I don't have the car this morning because my wife's at work, and if I did have the car after this conversation, I would probably be going to see if I could get to Greg's in time for a bacon roll or something, because, yeah, now I'm hungry. But yeah, Weetabix.
yeah.
And that's it for listener correspondence, so I'll just say to myself, play the jingle.
Chris Hyde. Listen to correspondence. It's time. It's time. Chris Hyde.
Always wonder if other people find themselves during the jingle when he goes Chris Hyde, right at the end goes Chris Hyde, like I do. You can't see it because people are watching. I mean, you can see it, but I always might there's just like a little, I don't know. Anyway, that's been a podcast this week. We'll be back next week. I think probably we'll be back to being live. This is a pre-record, but you can still hear it early and watch it early if you're a Patreon, patreon.com/GodIsAGeek. And if you want to catch us live, you'll need to go to youtube.com/GodIsAGeek and subscribe. And if you hit the bell button, you'll be notified when there's an upcoming show. It's usually Thursday between 5 and 6-ish or 6 and 7-ish. But it has been so busy lately that we have missed a couple of weeks and we have had to do things on Fridays. There's a serious amount of video games, you know. And also, I will just I didn't mention it this week, but I have played Super Mario Wonder. Shock horror. And you can go to godisageek.com to read some thoughts on that, and we'll have a video up on that as well. Like I say, there's a lot coming up. And with that, thank you to Lyle for being here this week so we could have a podcast.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a morning treat for us.
Yeah, it's quite nice getting it out of the way. Sorry, no, I mean it's been quite nice doing a podcast early in the morning, hasn't it? No, it has been. It's nice to do it in the morning. It's a different challenge. I think people are less tired and thinking about their dinner. And I think I should have had breakfast before, because now it's all I can think about, and I got other things to do. But thank you, Lyle, for being here, and thank you if you watched it. And I forget to say this, but you can actually review us on Spotify. That is a thing you can do. I always forget you can do that. Or any podcast host, however you listen. These days, I know people like to watch stuff. I know they listen stuff. There's all sorts of ways of consuming your favourite gaming podcast, which is obviously this one.
Which is us,
But please do, rate and review if you have never done so. It does help. It means more people see us. And the more people see us, the more cool stuff we can do. So thank you for that. And again, thanks to Lyle and to everybody else. We'll speak to you next week, or whenever you choose to listen. Bye-bye for now.